Welcome to the Radio Free Hub City monthly newscast, live from Honey Pot Acres Studio in Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm your host, DJ Warbuckler, the Red Pit Yahoo, and joined by me today is DJ BB, the Dingbat. What is the newscast? It's a podcast format show where you can participate live on X. There's no dial-in line for the newscast, no script, no set agenda. We talk about local and global news that matters the most to Hub City. Interested in participating? Just hit that request button and we'll consider you. The full recording of this show will be available through Spotify as well as X for replay. Now, before we get started tonight, I want to give a huge shout out to all of our listeners. As of today, April 29th, we have over 5,500 total listens through Spotify. So thank you so much, everyone who keeps tuning in. We're going to keep cranking out this fresh content as often as we possibly can. Now, let's take a look at tonight's topics. I want to start off tonight with a update on the Key Bridge incident. So it's been 1 month since the Key Bridge was hit by the MV Dolly and resulting in the complete collapse of the bridge. Since the incident, the Army Corps of Engineers has managed to open up temporary channels, and they've managed to get 171 commercial vessels through alternate channels in and out of the Port of Baltimore. And they've also made significant progress in removing the containers from the Dolly that they have to remove in order to refloat it and then remove it. They've removed 137 out of the approximately 180 containers they're going to need to remove. So big thanks to the over 900 personnel, including uniformed and civilian workers from 53 different federal, state, and local agencies who have been working to remove the estimated 50,000 tons of wreckage at the site. It's a monumental feat. Huge shout out to everyone involved. It's not safe work. It is absolutely dangerous work because we're dealing with underwater wreckage, twisted metal that can shift, bend, break, what have you. And it's definitely a monumental effort. So huge thanks to everyone involved in that. BB, what's the first topic you have for us for tonight?
Well, I guess the first thing that I stumbled across that I thought was really interesting, the National Harbor has implemented a curfew on the weekends. Minors ages 16 and under must be accompanied by an adult from 5 p.m. until 6 a.m. And the first weekend that this was implemented was this past weekend, and they reported not one violation. And they said that the reason that they tried this curfew was because there had been like a number of large fights. They had children that seemed to be arriving. They said children as young as 12 were just catching Ubers to the harbor at all hours of the night unattended. And so I think that it's really interesting that even though it sounds like kind of a drastic measure, it's also a safety issue, to keep children safe. And also, I think it's cool that there was not one single violation. And parents can face a $250 fine if they find your kid down there unsupervised. But again, it's only on the weekends. And I think that that's just kind of an example of if you just put guidelines in place, maybe people will be happy to follow them because it's in everyone's best interest. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see how that goes. I hope it continues to be successful.
That's interesting. So how do 12-year-olds get an Uber? That's my question.
Well, that was one of the things that I don't know if they had someone older getting an Uber. I know some areas, I'm not sure what the specific age is, but I know some areas do have Uber and Lyft for minors, but I thought you had to be 16 even in those cases. But I mean, I'm not really sure. But they were concerned about the crowd behavior, but they were also concerned about the children, because I suppose it seemed like in a lot of cases the parents were unaware that their kids were down there, or that they were up to no good. So, or perhaps they were a victim of others that were up to no good. And so, I thought that was really great that they didn't have a single violation the first week. Like maybe everybody just realizes that they're serious, and it's just not safe, and it's just not acceptable. A lot of people visit the harbor, and you can't go ruining it for everyone, starting fights and things like that. But also, human trafficking is a problem. Things like the children are at risk. So I'm really interested to see how that goes, and I hope that if it continues to go well, maybe other places will consider something like that. And I don't feel like it's too aggressive, because it's only on weekends when it's the most crowded, and nighttime hours. So, I mean, I don't feel like that's unreasonable.
Well, and I know I you might know this better than I do. I think Hagerstown has had curfews in the past. I don't know if they still do or not, but I don't know if they still put them in place. But I think that Hagerstown's done that in the past, especially due to, as the warmer weather sets in, they've got problems with kids out late at night breaking into cars and stuff like that.
And I think maybe one of the difficulties with situations like that is that sometimes it is really difficult to, for an authority or even just a concerned citizen. It's really hard to identify a child. Most children do not have government issue ID. Like, a lot of them have school IDs, but you have to be very careful asking children for their information. Even law enforcement, there needs to be a parent present before you ask super personal information. And let's face it, children, especially teenagers, if they're already doing things they're not supposed to be doing, it would not be outside the realm of possibility that they're not giving honest information, their name or where they live. Or, I mean, if you just don't have ID, what are they supposed to do? You know what I mean? We can't just start like arresting people that look underage for walking. So I think that's why curfews are kind of difficult. But the way that the National Harbor is handling it, is that you have to be able to, if asked, you have to be able to provide ID, so that they know that you are over the age of 18. So that's fairly simple. They're not asking children to prove that they're children. They're asking adults to prove that they're adults. So
that makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, if that works, then other areas can follow suit. That would be good. So, all right. Well, moving on to the next topic. Yes, Hagerstown, that was an earthquake you felt earlier this month. On April 5th, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake struck 7 kilometers north of White House Station, New Jersey. And the earthquake was actually felt all up and down the East Coast, as far south as Washington, D.C., apparently. So I know I did not personally feel the earthquake. I did see some people said on social media that, yes, they felt the earthquake in the Hagerstown area. BB, did you feel the earthquake this month?
Yeah, I don't think so. Like, I would have no idea. But no, I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, but I did see a lot of people say that they felt something or heard something. But I was thankful, but I was also amazed that with such a broad like geographic region that was affected, there was really no damage to speak of.
Yeah, and that's, one of the fortunate things about earthquakes in this area is that they're very rare, and when they do happen, they're usually very mild. Compared to some of the ones that California or Washington State have experienced, it's a lot milder, but it does happen. We had one many years ago I believe, actually cracked the Washington Monument in D.C. Now, I believe it's been fixed since then, but so it's absolutely a possibility. But thank goodness, no damage this time. So yeah, absolutely. All right, BB, what else you got tonight?
Well, just today, we actually published a story about a new scam. Well, I guess not a new scam. It's a scam that we just found out about. We saw a lot of our followers and readers and just our friends share a viral social media post of a woman claiming that a restaurant had set up a fake dating app profile with the intention of getting her to the restaurant as a customer under false pretenses. And so I thought that if this was true, it was probably an isolated incident, but so many people had shared it and everyone seemed to be asking, is this true? So I thought, we should look into it. And it turns out that not only is it true, it is extremely common and widespread. It affects all major, all the popular dating platforms in the United States. And there really isn't any law prohibiting. And so the way that this works is that now it said restaurants, but I'm not sure if there are other sorts of businesses perpetrating this behavior. But restaurants was what I was mentioned, and that's what I found evidence of. So they make fake dating profiles on apps, and they use bots to interact with the people. And they're very careful about wording. Like it will say, would you like to have dinner at such and such a restaurant? And nowhere in there does it say, would you like to have dinner with me? You know what I mean? So, but obviously that is implied. You're on a dating app, okay? So you are assuming that you are talking to a real person and they're asking you to dinner. And the thinking is that, you go to the restaurant, you are waiting for your date. In all likelihood, it's a person that obviously it's a person that you've never met before because you have no idea that it's not a real person. And so you're sitting there and then your date never shows. Obviously, that's an awkward and it can be kind of traumatic situation. And so you are more inclined to order something from the restaurant. And then people are often left with a false sense of gratitude to the establishment because, they were having a really bad moment. And the staff was hospitable, the food was good, they made them feel welcome, and it turned into an okay night. And so, I was kind of floored because I think a lot of people, when they're on any kind of social media app, they know that people catfish or that not every profile is real. But I think that we all pretty much assume that it's, individual people that are, up to whatever nefarious thing. And I don't think anyone would ever assume that it was the restaurant that they're sitting in.
That's wild.
Yeah, and it really doesn't seem like there's a way. I mean, there's no law saying that you have to use your real information on social media apps. And there's no regulation saying that, you have to show up for a date that you invite someone to. So there's really nothing that can be done about this. And it's also very difficult to prove. But they started the way that they collected data and they started noticing that there were a lot of people who were just getting stood up at the same specific restaurants in question. And so then they started looking at other, and they have found instances of this in at least 42 states from what I saw. So that's kind of nuts.
I gotta wonder where they came up with that idea at first. Is that a marketing agency doing that?
India. It started in India, I believe they said in 2019, 2020. It started happening in India as a way to obviously to get customers into the door. And another point that it brought up was that so people are sitting there, they realize that their date has not arrived. Okay, this person is not coming. So then they start to wonder, well, was I talking to a catfish? And so sometimes you will stay in the restaurant longer just because you feel unsafe, because you're wondering, okay, well, This person knows where I am. What if this person is a dangerous person, and they're waiting outside by my vehicle, and I already told them what I look like, and I already told them what I'd be wearing and what time I would be here. And so they are thinking the restaurant is the safe haven that's trying to make their day better, and really it's the businesses that are setting them up for this.
That's yeah. I mean it's shady, but at the same time, it's a genius marketing strategy. I'll give them that. You know,
And it has
you're
a
definitely
name.
getting people
They
in
call
there.
they call it food digging. Like, it has a name. It's like a thing, you know. And they call it food digging,
Right.
very much like gold digging, where you're just in it to get something out of someone, and you're not genuinely looking for any type of relationship. And it's just, I can't even. And I was just playing it through in my head, and I was just thinking, like, that would never go through my mind, I don't think.
Yeah, that's wild. I'm glad I'm not in the dating scene anymore, because I'd probably flip the hell out
I
on
have to
somebody.
wonder, LinkedIn was actually mentioned. And so I'm wondering if it's not just like blind date situations, like maybe it's job interviews or business meeting, things like that, where you're making a connection for other reasons, anywhere that you would be meeting a person in a public place, and, food and drinks would be appropriate. I guess it could happen. So the post that I saw was specifically about, the blind date scenarios, but I suppose that could affect anyone that is meeting a stranger in a place of business.
So, I'm gonna go ahead and go out on a limb here and say, I can think of one business that would never do that. You know which one that would be?
Which one?
Honey Pot Acres Farm, because in fact they're one of our sponsors. Do you want to eat healthier, but don't trust all those preservatives they put in the grocery store food, or don't trust that the person that's meeting you for dinner is a real person? Try Honey Pot Acres Farm, where technology meets nature. Our GMO-free, all-natural products are bursting with flavor and nutrition. Look for us at the Sharpersburg Farmers Market on June 2nd, behind Battleview Market on Sharpsburg Pike. Visit honeypotacres.com for more information, and we promise we won't catfish you. That's honeypotacres.com. And speaking of catfish, BB, why don't you talk a little bit about the catfish crisis in Maryland?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so blue catfish and flatheads are actually invasive, and they are, well, at least in our area, they are everywhere. And the problem is that they are dominant over native species like channel cat. Actually, this year, striped bass season was delayed and has still not started. It's an emergency because their populations are just so low, and a lot of that has to do with the invasive species. And so DNR, there's no limit. You can catch as many of these fish as you want. Like, you can sit out there all night and catch these fish. But also, if you do catch one, even by accident, you are required to dispatch it on site. You have to kill it on site. You can't transport it live, and you cannot throw it back. And you can get up to, I think it was a $1,500 fine per fish. So I would highly advise anyone that's out here fishing just to look up some of the things, because not everybody eats catfish. Not everyone. We went out fishing last night, and we caught some smaller bait fish, but I mean, primarily we caught flathead catfish. And so if you're not prepared to fillet them and vacuum seal them and freeze them and stuff, there are other uses. You can use them for compost and gardening and stuff. The DNR doesn't even care if you just throw them away. But I will say that I have been fishing to several local spots this season, and I have not seen any signage to that effect, nor have I seen any on how you should dispatch them on site and what you should do with the remains. So, be prepared. If you go fishing, you're going to catch them, and they want you to catch them. You can go onto DNR's website under the fishing section, and they actually have tournaments specifically for these invasive species, and a lot of them you can participate online, and some of them are free, and some of them you pay a fee, but it's for a charity, and they explain all that depending on which one it is. But I mean, they are doing everything they can to get people to fish these as much as possible, and it's also becoming they're trying to encourage restaurants to put these on the menu. A lot of people are under the impression that the catfish is muddy and it's a bottom feeder, but it's one of those fish where with just a little bit of prep work, if you purge it in some milk or some beer or some seasonings or whatever, I mean, it's wonderful. You can fry it, you can bake it, you can fillet it. It doesn't really matter. So just try to break some of these stereotypes. They did a very similar thing with rockfish years ago. You never used to see that on a menu, and now it's on a lot of menus. It's a very popular item. And in other states, catfish is a very popular item. So, I mean, I guess go fishing and try to get these fish out of here because they're eating all the crabs and the bass, and it's a hot mess.
No, you just said they're eating the crabs. Now it's war. Okay.
Yes,
that's war.
They also, because they have made their way, into the brackish waters where the rivers meet the bay, and so that is also where a lot of even sharks, their nurseries are in places like that. And I mean, catfish are not, at least in my experience, they are not very discriminatory. I have caught catfish on everything from Laffy Taffy to rancid chicken to live fish, Jello and cheesecloth. They will eat anything. And they do eat everything, and it's decimating native populations.
Just to give people an idea, how much does a catfish weigh? How much did the last one you caught weigh?
The average flathead in Maryland weighs 18 to 20 pounds. And then the blue cats are a bit smaller than that. And in our area, I find that the flatheads tend to be a little bit smaller, but it's not unusual. If you're fishing on a boat and you're out in the middle of the river where it's deeper, you'll probably catch larger ones. But even bank fishing, it's not unusual to catch one and you hold it up and it's from your feet to your waist. I mean, these are large fish. One side, one fillet is usually enough for a meal for a family of 4. So, it is a really good opportunity, to stock up your freezer or see if you have friends that would be interested. And one of the things that we don't have in our area that they do have in a lot of other places is that they have restaurants and mom and pop grocers that will purchase these fish from individual fishermen. Like you can just kind of take a cooler around back and they're very interested. We don't have anything like that here. And to my knowledge, we also don't have any sort of shelters or pantries that are asking for this item. And I'm guessing that's because it's fish and it's perishable.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing is when anything perishable, it's got a limited shelf life, and especially if all of a sudden somebody shows up with 3 20-pound fish,
Yes.
What am I going to do with 60 pounds of fish? I don't know.
Right.
Plus you got to worry about cleaning it and cutting it up and everything else. So
you've still got heads, tails, and guts, and that was why I mentioned the compost, because you don't even have to do anything to what's left over after you fillet a fish. You can literally just dig a hole, drop it in, and then you plant, especially vine plants like pumpkins, cucumbers, just plant it right on top, and it feeds off of that for the entire season. It really works. And if you want to bury it deep enough, probably about a foot down so that it doesn't attract animals, pests, things of that nature. But I mean, worst case scenario, like I've even frozen, the heads and the fish, and then waited until trash day to take that out so that it's not stinking up your outdoor trash can.
Very good. Very good. Well, hopefully more people start catching those and get the population under control. So very interesting. All right. Next up, on middle of May. I'm not sure the exact date. May 18th is when. I'm sorry, April. April. Wow. No, it's not May yet. On April 18th, we ran this story. U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has taken legal action against Sheetz, alleging that the convenience store chain violated federal law by engaging in racially discriminatory hiring practices. Okay. Now, what's interesting, though, is that the lawsuit asserts that Sheetz denied employment based upon race, but they did not intentionally have racial bias in their hiring. What they're saying was going on is because Sheetz screens job applicants for criminal records, that this is resulting in minorities being rejected from employment opportunities with Sheetz more often. What? I'm a little confused by this. BB, shed some light on this for us.
I mean, I think that it's really going to come down to, like when we get to see the entirety of the argument. I think that the only way that this would make any sense is if they had some sort of evidence to suggest that, let's say, a person of color had crime A on their background check, and a Caucasian person also had crime A, and they did not hire the person of color, but hired the Caucasian person with the same conviction. But there has been no mention of that. That's just the only thing that I personally could think of where that would fly, because to me, it seems to suggest that people of color and minorities are being prosecuted and convicted at a higher targeted rate than white people. I mean, that has been a cry from minority communities for decades. Like, you are putting us in jail for things that other people are getting off scot-free, probation before judgment, charges dismissed. And it's, they have been crying for help for these issues for everywhere, widespread. So to me, it's just kind of like, I'm kind of like, how did Sheetz get singled out? I don't quite understand how that happened. And to my knowledge, I have not seen, there might be, but I personally have not seen, and I have looked, I haven't seen anyone who didn't get a job at Sheetz that went and told the feds that Sheetz is racist. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure where.
Right.
I think we need a little bit more information, because I do think that an employer, as long as, now, I guess another thing could be, they should disclose that information during the application process, so that people aren't embarrassed thinking that, that they have a chance to get this job when really there's something on their background that would preclude them. So that might be another thing, like when are people finding out that this whatever conviction is what is prohibiting them from employment at Sheetz. So, I mean, I have tried to look into it further to answer some of these questions, and information just seems very limited right now. And one thing I have noticed is that Sheetz has not clapped back about this. Like, I have not seen them even publicly acknowledge this, which is not uncommon when there's, an ongoing legal case, because anything you say publicly can be used in court.
Yeah.
So they often stick to like official statements and such, but I've not even seen one of those from Sheetz, and they're going up everywhere, and they seem to be thriving, and customers and employees seem to be happy. And it just really seems like, just from what we know so far, that it's one of those situations where you're kind of shooting the messenger.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll monitor that and post updates as they're available.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested to try to find out more about that, because I kind of feel like someone that wasn't involved in the judicial proceedings to arrest or convict someone, how can it be their fault that a person has something on their record? Like,
yeah.
And I mean, employers have the right to say that, even though weed is legal, they won't they have the right to not hire you if you take a drug test and THC shows up in your system. I mean, that could also be something. I don't see why that's not considered discriminatory.
Especially if somebody has a medical marijuana card.
Correct. And if they have and also it's perfectly legal. If you go to take a drug test and alcohol or whatever or prescription medication show up, it's not a problem. So I think that maybe that is what we need to. Maybe we need to look at employment in 2024 in a broader sense and realize that a lot of times some of our federal laws and the judicial process have not caught up to social changes.
You know, and speaking of employment, this might be a good opportunity to segue to another topic. Do you want to talk about the FTC with non-competes?
Okay, so non-compete clauses have been I don't know if the word was banned, unless you are a high-level executive. And the reasoning was that a lot of people, things have changed post-pandemic, and a lot of people are in a contract position where they can't just go work for someone else. They have a non-compete. That's very common in everything from the food service industry to media, legal, cybersecurity, tech, especially tech. And so people are kind of like, okay, when I signed this contract, my rent was $900 a month and this was the going rate. But now minimum wage is only $2 less than what I'm making. And if I walked into another company that does a similar thing today and was hired fresh, I would be making more, as a new employee than I'm making as a tenured employee here. And that's not really fair. So I think that's what they were trying to prevent. So what they did was, if you have a non-compete clause, you currently have the ability to renegotiate the terms. So you can just say, look, if I went to, I love working here. I like the people. I like the job. But if I went across the street, I'd be making $5 more an hour or however much more a year salary, or I'd have these benefits. And that gives your employer the opportunity to match that or at least come close and renegotiate to something that you're like, okay, now I'm satisfied. Now I feel properly compensated. But since that happened, there was kind of some pushback and some public outcry. So they are now going to reconsider that decision already. So we are kind of in limbo.
So moving at the speed of government.
Yeah, and I believe they received over 260,000 public comments within a few hours. So I don't think they were kind of ready for how passionate people on both sides of the action were going to be.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. So, all right. Well, we'll keep a close eye on that. So let's see what next. Well, we do have a new Maryland State Superintendent of Schools, and that is Dr. Carrie Wright. Now, Dr. Wright has already been the interim state superintendent, but they went ahead and made that official here on April 24th of this year. And, big congratulations to Dr. Wright. She's already made significant strides in collaboration with the Maryland State Department of Education during her 10 years interim superintendent. So the State Board of Education is very hopeful and believe that she's going to be doing an excellent job with helping out the state board and hopefully improve the Maryland school systems a little bit, especially when it comes to, some of the problems with as far as like the blueprint for Maryland's future for education and some of the controversies around that. So her first full 4-year term starts on July 1st of this year. And we'll see how she goes. So
I saw
BB.
today that she plans to establish a neutral oversight board because she has grave concerns about the report card system that we use to rate Maryland public schools. Apparently, the thinking is that when the system was put into place, education itself looked very different than it does today. And also, just demographics have changed. Student needs have changed. What teachers, how they teach and what rights they have and how they are allowed to manage the children and what services are like. Pretty much everything has changed, really. I mean, if you think about it, everything has changed. And so they think that it's time to maybe take a look at how we are deciding what school is a good school, and the yardstick we're measuring by here. Like, maybe it's time to reevaluate that.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Because perhaps a school that was, blue ribbon rated or whatever, or very highly regarded or recommended, perhaps they were able to serve the needs of the student population very well 10 years ago. But the criteria for what serving a student population looks a lot different in 2024. We have heavy focus on nutrition, mental health, things that go beyond, reading, writing, and arithmetic. So I think that they think that that's a good place to start, is to look at how we are evaluating the schools themselves, and then we can take a look at how we are evaluating the students' progress.
Yeah, and on related news, the Maryland State Board of Education is going to be having a meeting on Tuesday, April 30th, and they're going to be discussing multiple issues such as high-quality instruction materials, considering the adoption for them, as well as some updates to the Maryland Code of Regulations, including programs for homeless children and revised graduation requirements for public high schools in Maryland. So, stay tuned for that. We'll have hopefully more details once that all gets published after the meeting. So, BB, what's our next topic?
It is National Small Business Week. So I thought that it would be a good time to remind people that this time of year, there are a lot of happy celebratory things that people have coming up. You've got graduations, you've got weddings, you've got Mother's Day, you've got Father's Day, teacher appreciation, all kinds of fun, end of the school year, start of the summer type things. And so, you can find really unique things and support small business at the same time. So, just be mindful of that. If you're in the or even if you're in the market for, outdoor stuff for your house, or, you're doing a little spring cleaning or, sprucing things up, you need some new clothes. Just ask yourself if there is a local business, a small business that you can at least check out. Nobody's saying you have to shop there, but at least go in, check it out, see what they have, see how it compares to larger retailers.
Very good. Very good. So, all right. Well, and of course we are a small business, as is Honey Pot Acres. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to get into another advertisement for them. But we are absolutely a small business. Please come support us. If you love our news enough, we do have an option. You can subscribe for $5 a month, and you get some bonus content out of that. But more importantly, you help support us, help us keep the lights on, help us grow the station. And by the way, thanks to all of our increased listeners and everyone that's been visiting the website and all of our actual subscribers here, we've been able to make some huge leaps and bounds in evolving some of the radio stations technology and the website technology, and that's all thanks to you. You know, we're providing a lot more content now, especially this program right here. This program probably would not be on the air if it weren't for the fact that we have so many supporters now who visit us on a regular basis. So thank you all so much for your continued support, and we are going to absolutely keep working to advance and improve Radio Free Hub City as much as we possibly can. So, all right. So another one I wanted to go ahead and bring up is the FCC reinstates net neutrality. Now, you actually brought this one to my attention. I don't think many people knew this actually happened. It happened on April 25th.
They snuck it in.
Yeah. I mean, it just like all of a sudden, oh, hey, here, surprise. So on April 25th.
With the end of the affordable connectivity program as well. So, I mean, they are expecting that hundreds of thousands of people are at risk of losing internet access altogether simultaneously while net neutrality is reinstated. So,
wow.
Fire away. Tell everybody why that's a mess.
So what they've done is they've reclassified broadband internet service as a Title II telecommunications service. And that allows them to not only safeguard consumer interests, but also uphold national security imperatives and promote public safety. And they're actually revoking authorizations for foreign-owned entities that they believe pose threats to national security in operating broadband networks. And I think this part here is probably very related to the actual TikTok ban, which we haven't talked about yet. But you know, it's got the same vibe to it. It's got the same feeling that, okay, basically they know that we have Chinese-owned broadband providers, and they're going to shut those broadband providers down. You know, I have mixed feelings on that. You know, for one thing, okay, yes, that's definitely a national security concern, especially if, like, you've got a federal employee that's teleworking across that broadband provider. But at the same time, you know, are we going to start doing that for any foreign-owned corporation? Where, you know, what if somebody's a resident of the United States, but they own a business? Are we going to start shutting down those businesses? It's a very, and I hate to use this word, but it's the truth. It's a very slippery slope. And I have a lot of mixed feelings on it. After reading multiple times, you know, what's going on with it, I'm still not sure where I stand. So, yeah, it's a mess. But, you know, I think that the silver lining in all of this will be that the FCC will now be able to actually have some sort of enforcement power against broadband providers when they suffer from continued internet outages, because it's hurting the businesses, it's hurting the consumers, it's hurting the people who are trying to work from home, and the FCC is now actually apparently going to have some teeth for that, which is good news for me, because and I'm going to go ahead and say it here, you know, my broadband provider was recently bought out by Earthlink, and ever since it was bought out by Earthlink, I've had at least once a week, I've had an outage for 15, 20 minutes a day, once a week. Now, that's not significant amount of time, but when it happens, if I'm in the middle of a work phone call or something like that, that's a problem. That's interfering with my ability to work. So, you know, I prefer that the FCC stay hands off on as much stuff as possible. But I am kind of glad to see that they're actually going to have some teeth now when it comes to handling internet outages. And I know that, you know, internet service in Hagerstown area is definitely a controversial topic in the first place. I know people have a lot of problems with some of the internet providers. So I think it'll be interesting. What are your thoughts, BB?
I mean, I'm with you there. I think it's one of those, like, I don't know if it's a double-edged sword or a silver lining situation. And I just personally, I guess I'm kind of, you know, I'm snarkily amused by the fact that they specifically called out China And over
Yeah.
there you got Chinese people using VPNs to get on Facebook and Instagram, and now you got American people trying to figure out how to, it's kind of like people are going to do what they're going to do, and governments can only regulate so much. And when we say that it's predatory, when other and I do realize that this is specifically targeted at internet providers and apps, but if you think about what that app is, then you're also talking about regulating media, capitalism. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it is an app that is a tech product, but what the app does, I think, is why people are upset. A lot of people, have businesses primarily based on TikTok and not other platforms. They don't have a large following on Facebook, Instagram, things like that. And TikTok also has the TikTok shop. So when you're sitting there, flicking through reels and you're seeing, the videos of the creators and stuff, whatever they're selling, you can buy it right there without leaving the app right this second. And so a lot of people, like, that is their setup. And so now they are really worried, like, well, what am I going to do if we just wake up tomorrow and nobody can get on this app? And I think the other thing that's interesting is that when the TikTok ban was proposed and signed and all that good stuff, it was but you also have the option to sell, the United States portion of TikTok to an entity that we find acceptable. And China kind of called the bluff and was like, no, we would rather be banned than sell. And I don't think that was expected. So I think that's why
Yeah.
we haven't seen any details as to how this is going to be specifically implemented and regulated, because I sort of suspect that the thinking was that some other arrangement or agreement or compromise would be reached, and I don't think they anticipated just a no, that's okay, you can just go ahead and ban us because we're not budging. So that's going to be interesting.
Fun fact: sometimes when you play chicken with someone, they don't swerve and they
Right.
hit you head on. And I think that's what we're actually going to end up seeing here. Personally, I have went out and I have bought a shortwave radio, because now that the government is saying that the broadband providers are telecommunications providers and falling under the FCC's authority, I'm a little concerned about the ability for the internet to continue. So I went out, I bought a shortwave radio. For those not familiar, it allows you to listen to broadcasts from all over the world. On a good day, I can actually pick up shortwave transmissions from Mexico and sometimes even Europe. So look them up sometimes. A good alternative way of getting your news information, especially if something were to happen where we lose internet completely. So just throwing that out there.
That's another interesting point too, with the ending of the Affordable Connectivity Program. And for anyone unfamiliar, the federal government would subsidize individual households. They would subsidize your home internet services. Like, they would pay a portion of your bill to your internet service provider. And it was income based. So like people that were on like programs like EBT, Section 8, I believe, even if your child qualified for free school lunches, things like that. Okay. So they said that they no longer have the funding to keep that program going. So, but what they are doing is they are giving the same households with the exact same qualifications free tablets and smartphones with data packages included for absolutely free. And so what this does is, so before, I have Antietam cable, just as an example. So for people that qualified in my area, they would pay a portion of your bill to Antietam cable so that the cost to the user was much less, much more affordable, much like Amazon Prime charges a reduced rate for EBT customers. So now they had to go through your internet service provider to get your data or to regulate your devices and things like that. And internet service providers are not usually super keen to come off of their customer information, certainly not for free and not to the government. So I think that this was kind of to me, it just seems like kind of a sneaky, now the government is providing the internet access and the connectivity direct to consumers. So they absolutely can control what apps are used, what websites are visited, and what data is collected. And so that's kind of yes, it's a nice thing because it's very difficult to live without the internet in 2024, but it's also one of those things where it's like it's a nice thing, but it's got some teeth that people probably really have to think about.
BB, the government would never spy on its own citizens. You need to trust the government more. That's what I do.
I am fine with whoever wants to spy on me spying on me because I am a person that actually just loves, like, I drove by the roller skating rink the other day and I was like, man, I should get some roller skates. You know, I should buy some. And so I actually went into a local retail store, sporting goods store. I won't say which one. I didn't like the selection. I get home and I open up Facebook and it's Hot Topic apparently has a whole line of like a crazy looking like emo punk like roller skate. I'm like, this is great. Yes, I'm being sarcastic, but also, silver linings.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, we're running out of time here. Any last minute topic you want to bring up before I put in a plug about the Maryland elections coming up?
Nope, that was going to be my finisher. So.
Fantastic. Well, I'll go ahead and close us out on it then. So, by the way, for those not aware, this is an election year. And if you didn't know that, you probably don't have a TV because there's been plenty and plenty of commercial after commercial about it being an election year. So we have, in Maryland, we have a couple different options for voting. You can, of course, do mail-in voting. The ballot must be received by May 14th. I don't recommend that just because I don't trust the post office. But that's
I literally saw a notice from the federal government today that said that United States Postal Service phishing impersonator websites literally see the exact same amount of traffic as the actual United States Postal Service. So
wow, that's sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and to be clear, I'm not saying I don't trust the Postal Service because I think they're doing anything malicious, even though there has been cases where that's happened. I don't trust the Postal Service because I don't believe they'll get it there to me on time. I don't think they'll get the ballot there on time. That's my big concern. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Well, moving on though, you do have the option for early voting. Early voting will be at for the Hagerstown, Washington County area. There's going to be one in Hagerstown, one in Boonesboro, one in Smithsburg. Early voting is going to be from Thursday, May 2nd through Thursday, May 9th. And then you can also vote on Election Day. Election Day is on May 14th. And this was, of course, the primaries. If you're registered to vote in Maryland, you should have already received something in the mail about it saying that you can vote or whatever. But once again, we might not have just because, hey, it's possible that the post office didn't get it to you in time. So, in any case,
we ought to do that. We ought to put out a list on Radio Free Hub City of the offices that people will need to be prepared to vote for someone for. I remember a couple years ago, I didn't realize that the Register of Wills was an elected position. And so I think, maybe we should just make a quick little list of, see who's running for this, just so that, you know what the office is and you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, and I do have a page on the website on that, and I'll probably try to pin it to the top or something here coming up. That page I have talks about just the local offices, so it doesn't talk about any state level offices, but I do have on there about county offices as well as City of Hagerstown offices. So just letting everybody know, we will have more information. I actually posted an article today, reshared it from marylandmatters.org. Fantastic website, by the way, if you haven't checked them out. And that's an overview of the CD6 Democratic candidates. So, we'll definitely have some resources up between now and the election. So please stay tuned for that. Keep an eye out. But yeah, make sure you go vote. Absolutely, make sure you go vote. Election day is on May 14th. Obviously, you can't vote after that. So please get out and vote. BB, any final thoughts before we close this out for the month?
No, I just think it's wild that we have early voting and not late voting because they obviously don't know any of us very well.
Nice. Well, on that note, that's it for tonight's newscap. On behalf of BB and myself and all of the Radio Free Hub City family, thank you for listening, and we hope that you'll join us next time. And don't forget to visit our website for more local and national news at radiofreehubcity.com. Thank you for listening.